Welcome back to Between the Levees. Please stick around at the end of this episode to hear a few verses from Chad Jenkins' new song, Down River. It is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music. Thank you very much. I am joined today on Between the Levees by Miss Vicki Cain. She took a chance on a lowly trucking dispatcher from South Louisiana some years ago and brought me into this industry that we're chronicling on this little show I'm doing. Miss Vicki, thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Hey, Tim, it's good to be here finally.
Yes, ma'am. Well, you know how this begins. Tell me, were you born in St. Louis?
I was born in St. Louis, August 1st, 1957. I'm an old one.
What did your parents do for a living?
My dad actually worked for electromotive division. He was a purchasing agent, and my mom was a housewife until we got into grade school, and then she worked in the insurance, automobile insurance.
Well, what was life growing up in the late 50s, early 60s up there?
Life growing up, I kind of like Mark was a simple Midwest family, and not a whole lot that we played outside, we rode bikes, and went to church, so that was basically it until I was in the 5th grade, and then that's when my parents divorced.
Were you drawn to anything in school?
I liked art. That's what
Okay.
I excelled in art. My mom was an artist as well, and other than that, the other subjects, I basically took business subjects.
Okay. Did you attend college?
No, I did not. I attended the School of Hard Knocks in the barge industry.
Was that right out of high school?
I did. I started in my senior year of high school is when I started in the barge industry. I worked, I went to school part-time, half a day, and then I worked half a day. And that's how I started.
What were you doing and for whom?
This was SCNO Barge Lines and in St. Louis, and I started as a general office clerk.
And what does that mean?
And that basically just meant I just did odds and ends. My dad had known some of the people at SCNO, with him being an electromotive, they needed engine parts for the boats, EMD engines at that time. I don't even know if they have those anymore, but anyway, most of the boats had EMD engines at the time. And so that's how I kind of got the connection in the barge industry. He just said, "Hey, my daughter needs to find a job. Do you know of anything?" And they said, "Well, let me see." And then they called and they offered me a little office position to do some typing and filing and stuff while I was still attending high school. When I graduated, then they brought me on full time at that time.
So this was 1975?
This was 1974.
74. Okay.
1974.
And when you came on full time, were you still a clerk?
I was, and then I let's see here, how did that go? Then I was the secretary to his name was Gerald Weinman, and he was the treasurer of the company at that time. So I just basically just typed his letters, and it still was pretty simple stuff.
I'm sure it was exciting.
It wasn't as exciting as I thought it was going to be. I always thought that's what I was going to be, was a secretary. I took all these secretarial courses, and later on I found out that was not what I wanted to do.
Yeah, your career took a little bit of a different path, but
Yeah.
what kind of exposure did you have to the industry itself in that role?
At that time, not a whole lot until after I was the secretary, an opening came up in the crew dispatch. And that's when I really got a taste of the business and got hooked.
Tell me about that first job. Well, sort of a first job, but an operational role in the industry as a crew dispatcher.
And it was, and at that time, it was pretty much a man's world. So at that time, there were not very many women doing those type of positions. So, we basically, I started out just doing the the deck crew and the engineers, and we had a port captain that would crew the wheelhouse. Then you were responsible also for setting up the travel and transportation and all of that. So I really got involved with that, and I enjoyed it for a long time. I did that for a couple of years, I think it was. And then a barge dispatch job came opening. But I'm going to back up a little bit. My first job, when I did come on full time, one of my jobs, I guess that would have been some of the exposure, was I typed the phone books for the dispatchers. So they had all their phone numbers. At that time, you didn't have a cell phone to put your numbers in. So it was all handwritten into little binders. And so they gave me their scribbled up binders, and I had to make new phone books for them all. One of the dispatchers at that time was Jeff Kindle. And then also Joe Clays. That's another name that I'm not sure if you know that name, but a lot of people listening here will know. And then there was another dispatcher, Jerry Church, and Dave Morris. Those were the dispatchers at the time. So, when I got done with one person's phone book, then I did the next one. So that was my first involvement with dispatchers.
Super exciting, I'm sure it was. When did you first step foot on a boat or see a barge in person?
Actually, I think when I was crew dispatching, I wanted to see all the rivers, and the first river I ever got on was the Illinois River, and I caught the boat at Chillicothe near Peoria, and rode the boat up to Morris, Illinois, which was just south of Chicago, and then rode the boat all the way back to St. Louis. So that was my very first trip on a boat.
Any interesting or surprising memories from that trip?
That was I have some pictures of us. The way we had to get on the boat was quite interesting, because they had to I'm not sure if it was a little high water or whatever, but they had to put a ladder out, and me and the girl that were getting on the boat, we kind of had to crawl up the ladder, like on all fours up the ladder, a bear crawl. I don't know what you would call it, but anyway, that's how we got up on the boat. So I don't know if they would do that nowadays.
I doubt it. Not at the big companies anyway.
No.
So you end up in fleet dispatch, and obviously that puts you on a career path. But tell me about that first job. You as a dispatcher.
Me as a barge dispatcher.
Right.
That was another thing. I was the very first female dispatcher at the time, and they didn't want to call, everybody else was called dispatcher, senior dispatcher. And when they offered me the position, they called it that I was going to be an expediter. And basically they said that I was going to be like a dispatcher assistant, but I was actually dispatching the Illinois River. So the man at the time that was over the dispatchers, his name was Vern Morris, I think. Anyway, I kind of said something. I didn't really like being called an expediter because I was dispatching, and I wanted to be just like the guys, so I wanted to be called the same thing. And basically he just goes, well, we're taking a chance, and what, don't you think you can do it? And I said, I know I can do it, but I want to be called what I'm doing. So anyway, I kind of had to prove myself. And I did the Illinois River for, oh gosh, I can't even remember how long I did it for. But then I finally moved into the lower, and that's where I really enjoyed. Cairo South and the Gulf was the area that I loved to do.
Was, aside from the title dispute, was it a challenge, earning respect?
It was. You kind of had to you had to be a little tough. And I guess those who know me, I was a little rough around the edges. But you had to be that way back then, or, you just wouldn't survive. There was just a few of us women, in the industry. Some of them. Pam Weiss was one, and another girl, Barb Hedgepath. But we did kind of start out a little tough, just so that we could fit in with the group.
Sure. So tell me a little bit about the job running the Lower Miss.
Learn the Lower Miss. I had back when I was doing the clerical work, there was a map that I did of the entire river system, and I did it on a typewriter. And it just I guess I learned all the mile. That's how I learned all the mileposts, was doing this map that I still have it to this day. It's just straight lines, and then you just kind of cut and pasted all the river mile points on. But that's how I learned the river miles. And even as I would drive down to New Orleans, I used to do vacations down here just to come play, actually. But as I was driving down Highway 55, I'd say, okay, that's mile this, that's mile that. The Memphis is mile 737, and on down the river.
How long were you with SCNO?
I was with SCNO for 12 years. And like so many of the companies that I worked for, shortly before they were bought out, this was in 1985, they had a big layoff. And I think Mark even touched base on how, when they had layoffs back at that time, it wasn't so much the ones that had the most experience that stayed. It was the ones that were making more money that left. And so at that point, I was a senior dispatcher, I guess, making more money and, almost vested. So, with your insurance and pension plans. So in 1985, I was laid off. And at that time, a friend of mine that I had met through the industry, Alan Alario, had 3 boats that worked. He had 1 boat that worked at CGB Laplace, and he was getting 2 more boats, and he asked me if I would come help him run his company. And that's what got me down to New Orleans full-time, living here in 1985.
What was that company?
It was called St. Charles Towing Company.
How big was that company?
Just those 3 boats. And it basically was
Okay.
Alan, myself. And then at the time, our mechanic was Peter Murray, who is with CGB.
So you're in New Orleans. Was that where you met Willie?
That is where I met Willie. And I met Willie through, when I'm working at this company. He came on board as one of our captains. And that's how I met him. And basically, when it was payroll day, all the guys on the boat, they tried to get you to pay them a day ahead of time. They always wanted their pay a day ahead of time. They're like, Willie, go in and talk to Vicki. Get her to give us our checks a day early, But anyway, so but that's how we met, working there together. And really throughout the years, we pretty much worked at the same companies going forward, even after I took a little break.
Right. Now I dispatched him at Dockside. That was towards the end. But how did your relationship develop? Were y'all married?
We actually lived together for 5 years, and we had a son, William. And William was 5 years old when we decided to get married, and then it lasted 1 year. But we actually, it was kind of different. It was a different relationship. You know how Willie is. He was just pretty laid back. And he actually stayed in the house that I'm in right now. And I moved around the corner into an apartment when we split up. And William would run back and forth between the 2 places. But so we always stayed kind of close. It was kind of weird. Then I moved away from here in 1996. But anyway, when I came back, he was working for Zito, and that's what got me back into the business was Zito companies, and so then we were working together again, so kind of off and on, and then naturally AEP. So we worked together at 3 different companies.
Was AEP right after Zito?
AEP, yes, it was. I had moved away from New Orleans in 1996, and I stayed away for 10 years. And when I came back to work with Zito companies. But I left a whole bunch out here.
Well, what happened in your career after St. Charles Towing?
Okay, St. Charles Towing, that lasted from just 2 years, actually. It was 1985 to 1987. And at the time we had 3 boats. One of the boats actually was renamed after me, the Vicki Lynn. And it's no longer operating as the Vicki Lynn, or it may not even be operating at all now. But in 1987, things started slowing down again a little bit. And Alan was actually going to lose his boats. So they just said that it was time for for me to look for another job. And his wife was just going to help him with the day-to-day business, to help him out. But it was kind of a tough decision what to do, because at the time, my son, I was able to bring him back and forth to the office. So I had like a little makeshift nursery in the trailer, and he just would kind of buzz around all day long while I worked. And at that time, you had little crank up swings, and the captains would come into the trailer, and he was kind of like a little second crew member. But anyway, so when the company was going down, then I started looking in, and I got a job with a National Marine in New Orleans. So I started on there just as dispatcher, dispatching the lower Mississippi. And I stayed there till 1995. So shortly after that, then I moved back to St. Louis in 1996.
And I assume William stayed with you.
No,
the
he
whole time.
well, yeah, he did for a little while. Yeah. He stayed with me for a little while, and then he came back here.
Tell me about the time after National Marine.
Okay, after National Marine, I did a little bit of brokering, and I was having some personal difficulties at the time, and it was necessary for me to move back home for a little while. And so I moved back to St. Louis and try to regroup my life. And I was living with my father, and my son came with me for a while, and he lived up there for a couple of years with me. And he decided to come back and live with his dad. And I stayed in St. Louis. I actually stayed in St. Louis for 10 years. And while I was in St. Louis, there weren't really any barge jobs, and I really wasn't ready to get back into the barge business. So that's when I got into trucking. And so I worked for Mayflower Transit in the trade show division. And so that was my first time ever doing trucking. And I did well at it, and it was fun. And I enjoyed the interaction with the drivers most of the time, because you know how drivers can be. But I always missed the barge industry. I mean, that was in my blood. The trucking, I did it. It was logistics, similar, but not the same. And but I did stay in that for, while I was up in St. Louis. That was the career I did until I came back to New Orleans to get back into the industry, starting it as a fleet dispatcher.
When you came back down, you landed at Zito, right?
Correct. Yeah. Joey Photo worked there at the time. And finally something came up where I could get back down, so I could get back to be with my son, because he was having some issues. and needed a little bit more. He needed his mom, and I was ready to come back at that time. So so I moved back down here in Willie's house. He wasn't living here, and I moved back in this house and lived here with my son William, and worked at Zito Companies as a fleet dispatcher. I'm trying to think. I think I started at nights and then went into a day position, and that only lasted about 8 months. And that's when Darren Chambers called me and asked me if I wanted to come work for AEP.
Yeah, I didn't know that connection. So it was Darren that recruited you.
Darren called me. Yeah. I had known Terrence for many, many years when he was cleaning barges. And so I had developed a relationship with him, a working relationship with him. With that, setting up cleaning of barges, when I was dispatching at National Marine. And so I don't know if Terrence told Darren, hey, call Vicki, or how it went, but Darren was the one that made the call and asked me if I'd come in for an interview. And at the time I had, I had just kind of really started with Zito, and they moved me down here. So I felt a little bad for leaving at that time, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity to get with a company with better benefits and just a better chance of advance in my career.
So that was 06, 07-ish, you said?
That was I came to work at AEP in 06, October of 06, and I stayed there till 2016.
Walk me through your career with AEP. I know you have plenty of great memories from 06 until I showed up.
Right. And when did you show up again? 15?
Mid 2015. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I thought. All right. And that was one of my better decisions too, by the way. So anyway, I started out basically, I was, oh gosh, what did they call me? I was doing the redeliveries is what they hired me on for. They hired me on for the redelivery dispatcher. It was a new position they were starting because they were starting to turn fleet. And so they brought me on to do that. So I didn't come on as a fleet dispatcher. It was a newly developed position. So I kind of got to mold it into the way I wanted it to run for me, to work best for me and for the company. And I really did enjoy that. The Gulf is where I love it. It's fast. There's always something going on. And I just, that's the area that I've always loved doing was, basically Baton Rouge South. So I did that for quite a while, basically until Terrence and Jeff Kendall asked me if they asked me if I wanted to be the Gulf logistics manager. I'm like, whoa, I'm I've never done anything like that before. Oh, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And so basically I just kind of had to kind of wing it because I had two good mentors with them, but it was something that I had never trained to do. And but we had a great team. We really did. Those are some of my best memories at AEP in Convent when we moved to Convent. It just, the boat crews were awesome, and it was just like a well-oiled machine. And I was so proud to be part of that group.
Did you step into that role? Was Darren in that role before?
Darren was in the role of dispatch manager. And it was, I guess I was like more, that was another newly developed position for me. It wasn't quite, it was because I was over all of the Gulf, but let's see, had Darren, and then Darren was dispatching at the time.
Who was that core team? I'm sure I know most, if not all of them.
All right. Kenny Crapel was there, and Darren, and Trudy, Linda Finn. Let me think who else. Then we had, let's see. That was the core to begin with, was Kenny, myself, and Trudy and Linda, and Joe Ward.
When did Ryan Phillips show up?
Ryan Phillips showed up. We were, oh gosh, we were already at Convent. I can't remember what year that we did bring him on.
Well, he said he wouldn't come on the show, so I figured I had to mention him.
Oh, he said that? Oh, well, maybe we'll have to just say his name more and more like you
Yeah.
did mine.
No pressure, Ryan.
Hey, Ryan, it's your turn next. Yeah, yeah, Ryan didn't have any experience, and so he yeah, well, look where he's at now.
Well, Vicky, when I joined your group there in 2015, I was aware that the company was for sale. We weren't sure who. I didn't know anybody but AEP. But do you want to talk about that experience?
Okay, whew. Truthfully, I pretty much thought that I was going to retire at AEP. I really did. You know, there were several companies that we heard names of that were going to buy AEP, and you kept hearing ACBL, which I worked for SCNO. They were acquired by ACBL. I worked for National Marine. They were acquired by ACBL. I did happen to leave both companies before they were acquired. This time, I was right in the middle of it. It was a difficult period in my career, and the transition was not as easy as maybe I would have liked it to be, but I do believe there's always a reason for everything. So the transition only lasted about 8 months, and then I was laid off.
Well, I know thereafter you took a bit of a break and then ended up at Canal, I think, right?
I did. Well, when AEP sold the company, they did take care of their employees, and they had some stipulations if a job was dissolved or whatever between a certain period, you got a separation package. So I did get that. So I did get the package, and I decided that since I had been nonstop for so long, and when I was at AEP and the Gulf Logistics Manager, I was pretty much 24/7 all the time. I worked nights, weekends. I rarely took off any time at all. So I decided that I was going to basically take 3 months off. And I did. I didn't look for a job. I took 3 months off, just kind of cleared my head. I think I took a couple of trips, went home for a little bit, and then it was then I got a call from Canal Barge, and I thought, well, okay, it's time for me to go back to work now. So I did go back to work at Canal Barge, and that was a night dispatch position. So that was a big change from going from Gulf Logistics Manager to a night dispatcher, but it is what it is. And I was happy that Canal brought me on and got me back in the business once again.
I don't know much about Canal. What areas were you dispatching? Was it the entire river system?
Yeah, basically, at nighttime, you just kind of just fielded the calls. You did that position did a lot of data entry. Basically, you didn't do a whole lot of dispatching. It was mainly data entry, tankerman times and stuff. So it wasn't what I was used to. You weren't really making too many decisions on a boat goes here, a boat goes there. This barge goes here, this barge goes there. It basically was just data entry. And then I got the call to go to Ingram, and it was like, okay, I need to dispatch again, because I don't want to be a clerk. That's how I started.
And Ingram was much closer to home, right?
Ingram was much closer to home. I didn't have to work downtown, and working at night and working downtown was a little nervous. You got a little nervous being down there at nighttime by yourself, because you were the only one in the building. And Ingram was just 15 minutes from my house. I'm like, well, I'm there.
Well, tell me about the night dispatch job with Ingram. I'm familiar with it, but the viewers may not be.
Oh, it was quite interesting. I'm kind of a camera buff too. So working on the river, on their dispatchers work on the riverside on a boat actually. But anyway, I did like working on the river, and just, your office view was the boats working, and I love that. But you'd come in at 1800, and the day dispatcher, who was Kenny and Dennis Vallejo, they would have their night orders set out, and you pretty much needed to you just kind of stick to the script and keep things rolling. They had it pretty much set up for you for the day, and just keep it rolling. The night orders, the fleet pictures, just contacting all the elevators and fleets about when the boats were coming and what they were picking up. It was fun to get back into that, because I had been out of it for a while, and I really did enjoy it. And then at nighttime is a little bit different than in the daytime, because the guys on the boats really just they like to talk it up at nighttime because there's nobody else there. And so some of the conversations were quite comical, listening to the guys on the boat. So I really do miss that part.
And how long were you with Ingram?
I was with Ingram from 2018. When did I retire? I retired, what, 6 months ago? So till then, 2022.
And I know you're keeping busy in your retirement. You want to tell me about all that stuff you're doing?
I am. I'll back up a little bit. When in 2014, I lost my son William to an accidental fall, and my life as I knew it changed tremendously. And some of the things that he would tell me, he'd always come home and he'd say, "You're always at your desk working. You work too much. You're always at your desk working." And it really did make me realize that that's all I did was work. And I didn't really have any personal life at all, unless it was with people in the barge industry. I didn't have any outside friends. And so I started going to the gym. That was one thing I started doing. And so I made a group of gym friends. And then I just really wanted to do something in his memory. And William he's like me. He always loved dogs. And when he was little, he would always bring dogs home and say, "Oh, my mom's going to take care of it." So, we always had dogs. I didn't have dogs growing up though. I never had a dog. I had one dog when I was growing up. So I really wanted to do something in his memory, and volunteering turned out to be what I wanted to do in my retirement. And basically with the animal rescue. And that's what I did. I kind of started it before I retired. So that I would have something to do when I retired. So I had a plan before I retired, that this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to transport animals. I'm going to, help the animal shelters. I'm going to volunteer, help the homeless. And so I ended up with this huge group of new friends. I've got my barge friends. I got my gym friends. I got my dog friends. I got my just volunteer friends. And it's been a wild ride, and then I also got into biking, and I love biking. So I've got biking friends too. I stay busy. I don't stop. I like today I got up, went and rode on the North Shore with some friends. We went biking, we went trail riding on the Tammany Trace, and I came home, took care of the dogs, and now I'm talking to you. And my car's loaded up to do a transport tomorrow to bring 4, hopefully more dogs from kill shelters to fosters where they can get a new life. And it's been really fulfilling.
Well, I'm very glad to hear it. Miss Vicki, do any interesting stories come to mind from over the years?
There actually is. I was just thinking about this the other day, and I guess with you asking me about Willie, it reminded me of the time that one of Alan's boats, I forget which one it was, had to go to the shipyard, and he didn't have anybody to bring it to the shipyard except for Willie. But Willie didn't have a deckhand to get it through the industrial locks. And I was pregnant at the time with my son, and I actually went on the boat as the deckhand, and so that we could get through the locks. It was he got the boat in position, and then he would run down, go tie off the boat. So I mean, definitely you would not do anything like that in today's world, but I'm sure there weren't too many pregnant deckhands out at the time, but I did remember that the other day, how crazy that was.
How pregnant were you at the time?
I think I had to have been, I think I was like 7 months pregnant. I mean, I was pretty good, pretty preggers.
Yikes. All right. Well, you mentioned earlier, and I meant to ask, that you were the first female barge dispatcher. Was that just with SCNO or sort of industry wide as far as you knew?
I actually was one of the first female dispatchers. There were other dispatchers. Valley Line had some dispatchers. PV had a couple of dispatchers, and Nilo Barge Lines was another one. Barge Hedge Path, but there was only a handful of us back at that time, and we're actually friends to this day. And those are the girls that I go to Florida with, or used to go to Florida with. They all have grandchildren now, and I guess the girls' trips have kind of ended. I'm ready to go, but I don't have the grandkids.
Right. Well, I think we've come a long way in 50 years. This WEMOS group that's out there.
I know. I mean, there really is. And I'll tell you what, coming up as one of the few female dispatchers there were, we did have some fun times. We had some trips, every year we go to Paducah, Kentucky, and a company called Eigert Towing at the time. They would rent a houseboat, and we'd go chill on Kentucky Lake for the weekend, and they'd wine and dine us, and so I guess we got a few perks being the only female dispatchers, but it's come a long way. There's a lot of good women in the industry, and as we deserve to be.
Well, I agree, especially because you hired me.
Yeah.
Do you have any final message for the industry at large, or anybody that might be watching this episode?
I think what I find, the industry changed so much from the time that I was in. Back when I first started dispatching, we had to do a lot of, at that time, we swapped a lot of barges with other companies, and they don't do that anymore so much, but that's how we kept our boats full, and that's how I met a lot of people. I've got space on my boat, I can take your barges, and then when your boat has space, I'll give you my barges back. And that's how I met people like Pam Weiss, Mark Zarnicki, Harry Waddington, just so many people that have come across my way. But I think today, with everything being more email transmissions, I don't think you develop the relationships like we did back then. I've got friends now, some of my girlfriends in the barge industry, we take trips to Florida. We still get together after 40 years, we still get together. And I don't know that people develop those relationships anymore. So I'm kind of glad that I kind of grew up when I did, because I've really met a lot of interesting people, and I've learned a lot of different areas of the business through personal relationships. So I guess, I kind of like really kind of what you're doing here with these podcasts, lets people learn a little bit more about the person that you wouldn't know from email, or text messages. But I think the one thing that I always tried to do was stick to my word. If I booked something, that was my word. I'm going to move your barge. Even if my barge came available, I did move their barge. And then I just tried to find a ride for my barge, or, if I had to. But that was one thing. It is, to be true to your word. I think that's how I excelled in the business, was sticking to my word. If I said I was going to do something, I did it.
Well, I'd be lying if I didn't say that this podcast wasn't a little bit self-serving, since I missed out on 40 years of opportunity to meet people. But whatever the case, I do sincerely appreciate your time tonight, and thank you again for that chance you gave me 8 years ago.
You're welcome, and I'm glad I did, because you did me proud. You did me proud. You did
I'll
good.
keep at it. I'll
All
keep
right,
at it.
keep at
Thanks
it.
a lot.
All right, thank you.
I'll be the mighty Mississippi, 4 weeks alone on a towboat, and all I can think of is home. I'm calling everybody from your daddy to your mom, or anybody that I think will answer the phone. I've been wondering how you been, how's your health? I'm doing fine. How about yourself? How about yourself?
They say I'm always gone, on the road, never home. I say I'm trying to get this money, so I gotta stay gone. I tell my mama that I love her, even though I do wrong. And I've been praying to the Lord, I just gotta stay strong.